Okay, so there's been quite an update since March 25th when I presented the budget summary to the Board of Education. We actually had some money restored through state aid 2 days later. So we were reworking our numbers from Monday night, March 25th, to Wednesday, March 27th. So we've been working diligently. I didn't really hear what Kelly had to say because I was trying to get this up. But we worked all day on Wednesday, and then we met as a board committee Wednesday evening and went over our numbers again. So I want to reiterate, and I'm doing the wrong thing here, the goals that we set for our budget. We started out with budget goals, but basically it started with talking to our administrators, talking as a K-12 team, talking as an elementary team and a secondary team separately, and then coming back together again. But there were parameters that were set from the very beginning of what we needed to do to develop this budget. So some of our budget goals were to comply with the parameters of the tax levy. As we know, there's a limit and there's an 8-step calculation that Mr. Yusko has been going through on a periodic basis with the community as well as with the board. To stay within those parameters, of course. And then to provide efficiencies and cost savings in special education. Even in a good year, when we are not faced with the fiscal deficit that we've been facing with, we always need to take a very close look at the way that we are conducting business in special education, how we're serving the needs of our students. If we are declassifying students, if students are graduating, if we are having any fluctuation in our enrollment, then we need to take another look at how we are working in our special education department. So that was some of the things that we set forward, is to provide efficiencies and cost savings in special education as a district K-12. We also were committed to limiting the number of callbacks to save through attrition rather than additional cuts. As you know, we opened up an incentive for teachers to retire this year. We had 10 retirements because of that incentive. So we wanted to really provide a true cost savings there and not just automatically call back teachers, but again, to take that look at our staffing as it relates to the students and their needs and our classroom sizes. So we tried to save as much as we could through attrition rather than making additional cuts. We want to maintain and restore the high school electives, and I'll talk about the restoration of high school electives in another slide. But we wanted to at least preserve what we had and, if possible, restore meaningful electives for our high school students. And maintain our current AP courses. We know the difference between a student going to a college of choice or not can very often be the difference of taking AP courses. Budget goals continued is to maintain and restore co-curricular opportunities. We want a full-bodied curriculum for our children. We want to be able to provide a lot of the programs that has children coming to school. It's all about academics, yes, but it's also all about fitting in and finding a place for yourself in the many clubs and athletics and fine and performing arts. So we felt strongly that we wanted to preserve that for our students, because that's the type of school that we wanted to go to, and that's what they deserve to also have as their school. Maintain class size parameters, and again, I'll go over what those were, is in the Hudson Teachers Association contract, there are ranges, low range to high range. We took a mid-level approach to the high range. We didn't want our classroom sizes to be over the recommended range, but we also know that we're in an economy where we cannot have the lowest part of that range. So we started at mid-range and up. We wanted to provide a foundation for future budgets. We know that the hard decisions that we're making this year is going to carry through for the next few years. We're hoping that there's a change in the fiscal picture, but right now we need to be planning for next year's budget and the budget after that while we're planning for this budget. Another piece is that we'd like to maintain and work to raise the fund balance to an acceptable level. It is recommended that 4% of your total budget, so 4% of a $43,000 budget, should be what we have in our general fund. We currently have 1.3%, which is considered fiscally unhealthy for a district. We've applied some strategies to developing our budget this year. We wanted to maintain a focus on our district goal to increase the graduation rate in 3 years by 15%. Takes commitment, takes a real look at what it's going to take and what does that look like. Having a goal like that, what does that look like for a K through 2 building? What does that look like for a 3 through 6 building, and so on? Graduation rate and the raising of the graduation rate is not just a high school issue. It is a systemic K through 12 program, so that is something that we really took a good look at as we were developing our budget, as well as our state mandates. I use the term a forensic review of all district staffing. I could probably recite every staffing that we have in every one of our buildings at this time, because we really took a look at what are our students' needs, what is working, what do we need to restructure. So that was something that we really wrapped our minds around, is what is our staffing in every building. And lastly, to provide specific allocations to the buildings and departments with a 2.05% decrease. So not only did we roll the budget, but we also asked our principals to take 2% off of their budgets going forward in discretionary funds. Where did we save this year? The district's collective bargaining agreements have provided considerable savings going into the 13-14 school year. I inherited 5 open contracts, 6 including the food service contract, but that is self-sustained. In other words, the money that comes in through food service funds that contract. So when I talk about the 5 contracts that were open, they were unsettled, they had expired. We did settle 2 this year. The teachers settled in late November, December. And there was an incentive that I just talked about before, and opening up an incentive for teachers to retire this year. This number changed from March 25th. We talked about restoring 2 positions. We know that we have 2 retirements in our science department, and we need to restore one of those positions. And we also talked about family and consumer science, which is a mandated program at the junior high school that needed to be restored. However, and I'll show you in another slide, we also had 2 other positions that we knew we would have to restore if we're going to stay within the parameters of class sizes. Grade 2 comes out to 30 students in a classroom, and grade 6 was coming out to 33 students in a classroom. So what we talked about on March 25th was we knew there were 2 other positions that should be restored, but in order to do that, it meant 2 cuts someplace else. But with the restoration of state aid that came 2 days later, we were able to restore these 2 positions without making a cut elsewhere. You'll also recall that we talked about cutting 8 to 10 positions in the district, possibly 10 to 12 if we were going to work within the class size parameters for grade 2 and 6. It meant that we would have to make cuts elsewhere, so that would jump that to 10 to 12 cuts for the 13-14 school year. We were able to mitigate that, and there is half that many cuts this year. There's only 6 cuts that have been made in order to balance our budget, and we'll talk about those in a bit. So the overall savings through the retirement incentive has been reduced. This number was $750,000, but because we brought back 4 instead of the 2 that we were proposing, that has resulted in a savings of just over $500,000. And also, teachers received only their contractual step increase, no raise in addition to the contractual step increase that we were obligated to pay. The administrators also settled this year, and they made substantial health care concessions, saving the district, and I needed to put this word in here, over $21,000 just in the 2013-14 school year. The reason why I added this word is I realized that not only did we save $21,000 with the 6 administrators that are currently in that unit, but it automatically moved our retirees, and I think I've counted up 6 that I could remember, that now their plan has moved from the PPO 812 to the 815. So there's additional savings there because it moved the retirees to another plan. All other units are in negotiations, and it's not a secret that we are negotiating health care and the types of plans that are available to our staff and the concessions. Using the administrators as a model, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to move lockstep with what the administrators have done, but they are the leaders of this school district, and they have started the sea change that we're looking for in our health care. Factors to consider: the tax levy cap. This is another number that has changed since March 25th. We previously advised setting the levy at the maximum, which for our district, it's 5.3%. It's a safeguard for future increases in our mandated costs, and it's a limit to the number of staff and program cuts. But with the restored state aid, we recommend reducing that to 4.79%. And I'll let you know what's in the budget, but we feel it's important that we also listen to our taxpayers. And our taxpayers have also come out and said, you know, does it have to be at the levy limit of 5.3? Isn't there something with the restoration of state aid that you could help the taxpayers as well? It was not an easy task to do, but we were comfortable with going out with a 4.79% to let the taxpayers know that we're listening to them, but we also have an obligation to give the best education we possibly can to our students. A safe environment, academics, as well as co-curriculars. Raising the graduation rate takes commitment, and to go out with a tax levy below 4.79%, then we are really irresponsible to the students that we are entrusted with each day that they come to our schools. Future tax levy caps might be significantly less, so I believe that we were able to provide a very solid budget and a well-rounded program for our students based on this recommendation. And perhaps reductions in title funds, which we've already lost this year. Title funds, we lost $82,000 just in the current year, and we may be losing more title funds going forward. So it's important that we really pay close attention to what we're doing this year so that we are able to sustain ourselves in years coming. Additional factors is the changes in contractual obligations in the future years maybe have a greater impact on the budget. We just don't know. We're always going to be back in negotiations. The teachers unit, which is the largest unit, will be negotiating again in January of 2014. And 3 out of the 5 contracts will be in negotiations in the coming school year, if not settled before July 1st. And then, like I said, the HTA contract will be in negotiations again. So that's something that's fluid, and we don't really know what the obligations are going to be going forward. So what is included in the budget requesting a 4.79% tax levy? All of our state initiatives and mandates, such as the APPR, the Common Core Learning Standards, the programs that we just had a presentation about now, where the whole shift in what a student is going to learn and also the how we teach it in the classroom is sustained within this budget. Non-mandated programs. There's been a lot of talk, and people need to understand more than the people that work in the school district what non-mandated programs are and what the risk is if we continue with the fiscal crisis that we have been under for the last several years. Kindergarten is astonishing that it is not a state mandated program. We do not receive state aid on any kindergarten students that come in. And that's 7 teachers, and that's 160 students that are served. That is in this budget, and I want to see kindergarten always in our budgets. But it's important to note that even non-mandated programs have been preserved. The K-6 library media specialist, getting our youngest students onto the computers at a very early age to prepare them for what is ultimately going to be a computerized test beginning in 3rd grade. And our K-6 music and art programs have been preserved. Co-curricular clubs, all athletics, including modified sports, are in this budget. Fine and performing arts. So again, something that is a magnet for students that might not academically succeed to the level that they wish to, but yet they succeed in these other areas. This is all in the budget, so we've now restored a sports program. Professional development, making sure that our teachers and our staff are prepared for any changes, safety procedures, academic shifts and practices. We have to make sure that we are constantly honing our craft as educators, so that is included in this budget as well. We have restored the positions that I just talked about. The 2 retirements in science, we're restoring one of those positions. The family and consumer science retirement must be restored because it's a state mandated program, and 2 elementary positions. The 2nd grade classroom that factored out to be 30 students in a classroom is now down to 25 by restoring an elementary position. And also the 33 in the classroom at the 6th grade is now down to the acceptable 27 in a classroom, and that's within the parameters that were set. I am also very pleased and excited to say we are restoring the business department at the high school. These are meaningful electives for our high school students. This places students in the workforce. This gives them opportunities that should never have been taken from them. And I guess you can tell I am very excited. You know, the little light bulb went off one night and I'm like, why are we not doing this if we can? So this is a real win for our high school students to be able to take courses. It is a round of applause for our students. And limited cuts. And you know, I don't want to minimize the cuts. I have to say, in my long-term career, this is the first time I have ever had to make a personnel cut. Today, I was not looking forward to. We were hoping that things might change when we met as late as Wednesday evening. They didn't. To be able to do all of this, we still have to be responsible for restructuring things. Where did these 6 cuts come from? They pretty much came from restructuring our special education department. Kim Leibold was tasked with a very difficult problem, and that was to take a very global, systemic view of how we are delivering our special education programs, K through 12. And because she was able to take that view and restructure some things at the high school, the way that we're going to be delivering special education classes, it really necessitated cutting 2 teachers from special education, as well as 4 aides that are attached to special education as well. So those are where those 6 cuts are coming. But again, I would say even in a good year, positions like special education, positions like academic intervention services, really are going to be flexible based on our students' needs, the population, and re-looking at our staff and what our classrooms are like. So efficiencies and effectiveness and trying to restructure some things. So that's where that came from. And again, it's great that it's half of what we had predicted, but it's also not great because you never want to see any cuts done. But if it really is warranted based on restructuring ourselves and classroom sizes, then we must do that. So here's the projected class sizes. Again, as I talked about, what's in black remained. Here's where our concern was the last time that I did a presentation to the board on March 25th. This number had 5 teachers, which made our classroom average about 30, which was over the parameters set. So when you set parameters for the building principals to work within, you can't only use them when they work in your favor. You also have to say, well, that means we need to restore a position because this is outside of our parameters. So that is what we were able to do. Down here, though, if you recall, it's, you know, this is possible with additional state aid without making cuts elsewhere. We were going to have to restore these 2 positions, but that would have meant 2 other teachers being pulled from someplace else that we really couldn't make that cut as easily. And also in 6th grade, this was 4 sections with 33 students in a classroom, but now we can make that 1 recall to bring it down to 27, which is within the parameters of the classroom size. Appropriated fund balance, nothing has changed here. We're still fiscally unhealthy, but it's an improvement from the 11-12 school year where we had 138,000. We now have 540,000, which we don't expect to increase in the 13-14 school year, so there's a 0 variance, but at least we're moving in the right direction towards the $1.6 million that is recommended that we have not to be fiscally unhealthy. So the budget highlights. The proposed budget figure has changed a bit. It is $43,416,302 with a budget-to-budget increase of $1.8 million, and that's just under 4.5%. The proposed tax levy is $20,652,449 with a levy-to-levy increase less than $1 million. This was well over $1 million on March 25th. We were able to bring it down to $944,000 with our recommended 4.79% tax levy. The 1% still equals the 197. And this budget is below the calculated tax levy limit of 5.3%, with everything that we just talked about as far as being within the classroom parameters, having the business department restored, having modified sports restored, and also restoring the positions that we knew that we needed to, either based on state mandates or classroom sizes. So what does this mean to the taxpayer? We want to go over some of the assessed values, because if you remember when Mr. Yesko was giving his presentations, we used 5.3% as the amount that would be the dollar amount coming from the taxpayer. So if you have a house that is assessed at a value of $100,000, an example here with the new levy being reduced to 4.79% from the maximum allowable 5.3, if you live in Hudson, that is a difference of $86.50 per year. That's your annual increase. The highest increase with a value of $100,000 would be in Livingston with $94.41. For a $200,000 home, the difference, if you live in Hudson, is $173, with the most again in Livingston with under $200. It's $188 per year that would be an increase for. Now this is without star exemption, so that would be another reduction possibly. It also is no change in assessed values, no change in full values or equalization rates. But this gives you an example of what the dollar figure translates to with a 4.79%. Keep going up. With a $300,000 home in Hudson, it's $259.50. And the highest again in Livingston, $283.22. And just for fun, $1 million. There's businesses, there may be somebody that would be affected by this. In Hudson, that would increase the taxes by $865, and in Livingston, it's still under $1,000, $944. So there's an adjustment of what this means to the taxpayer if their home is worth 100, 200, 300, or $1 million. On the budget calendar, the board can vote on this tonight if they would like to adopt this budget. The spending plan is really what you're voting on. It's not the tax levy, it's the spending plan. It's the $43 million and everything that's going to provide our students pre-K through 12 with in the coming school year. And that would be this evening, no later than April 26th. And I just want to thank Kelly as the chairperson of the Board of Ed committee. I want to thank Tiffany Hamilton for the countless hours that have gone into providing a good sounding board, literally, and really putting our heads together and trying to come up with the best spending plan possible for the community of Hudson and also for our students. I want to thank Jerry Chapman, who was our special guest. She kind of came in every once in a while because she was interested in participating. And also, Bobby Yusko, I think he's done a fantastic job of hitting the ground with me, going out into the community, giving as many talking points as we possibly can to educate the community about what it takes for that 13-year walk from kindergarten to 12th grade to get our students to cross the stage to graduation. So again, thank you everybody for your help.
Thank you.
In my first year, and the administrators for all of their input. We've worked well as a team this year, and it's appreciated.